everybody. My name is Drew Dosek, and I'm joined by head trader Benjamin Poole. And welcome to our first show going live with Traders Edge Crypto. Thank you guys so much for joining us. We look forward to finding some opportunities in crypto for day trading today. If that doesn't happen, we'll get to answer a lot of questions on swing trading because crypto is at a pivotal threshold right now that I see with potential chances of breaking down. How you doing today, Ben?
I'm doing great. Yeah, I'm just noticing that as well. The daily chart on Bitcoin is could be developing a head and shoulders pattern. So it'd be interesting to see what you have to say as well.
Yeah, let's flip over to this Bitcoin chart right now. You can see I've got the 10-minute chart displayed, and I see this trend line that's created from a pivot low on Friday, May 30th. You can see we've tried to trade above this trend since then, but has since now dropped beneath on Monday today. Price has come back up and tested this line several times. So this is the line in the sand right now for the most immediate near term for Bitcoin. If we are going to be pushing any higher, flip back over to the daily chart. And you can see here too, we have an immature bear flag that's starting to form on the chart there for Bitcoin. That little trend line that you see right here was what we displayed on the 10-minute chart just a moment ago. But should this all play out, we would have some a potential move down to this $97,500 area with a little pit stop here at the 101. And now keep in mind, Bitcoin's chart can be saved right here. But all in all, what's developing too, not only this bear flag, but we've got a head and shoulders pattern that's also potentially forming on the chart of Bitcoin. And if that potentially happens, just, hypothetically, here, let's get a potential measured move target for that. We'd be looking roughly right about, right down here, 95,473. All right. Besides that, do we have any questions from the room about any other day trading levels? Because at the moment, I'm not finding anything that I'm really hot about for day trading. Anything on your radar, Ben?
No, we do have a couple questions about like swing trading and stuff. Right now, we're just going to focus on the day trades. So we're looking at a 1 to 10 minute time frame for extended moves. I do have one launch coin, but it's still so new that I don't really have any particular levels on it. But it's one that's moving about 17% today. Other than that, there's XMR USDT, FLM. So what I'm using is Blowfin. So you've got this nice little chart right here that gives you futures and it'll tell you hot, and then you can go to your what's moving in the 24-hour time frame. And so that's kind of what I'm using right now. In addition to TradingView, this will give me an idea of what is currently either trending hot or trending cold. So LPT USDT is another one that's kind of trending down. If it starts to head back down to about $8, I would be interested in LPT. But at the moment, it's still kind of off of its lows. So we're just going to kind of hold off on this chart right now. So nothing quite at the moment. There are a couple possible trend lines for this. So if we start breaking down a little bit more, we could attack this on the short side. We would just need a break of this upsloping trend line right here. And then it gets to the 50-day or the 50 moving average. And then if we break $8.20, that might be a good entry for a possible short. I know it is down already 9% on the day, but that's kind of what we look for is trend line breaks, not necessarily huge moves, but it could take us down another, 1.5%, 2% for on the short side.
One chart I want to bring up to folks' attention is I've got Radium displayed here on my chart. You can see here that price action is coming down today. Today, we're down 7.83%. And we're now right into the 618 retrace, which is at $2.33. The issue with this, and I would normally like to take this as a day trade if we had price action move straight down in. Notice how we had a couple days of pause, sideways movement. And then if I zoom into the 10-minute chart, you can see here we are bear flagging right on top of this support area, the 618 fib retrace. One positive sign for a potential move up, we've got a 10-minute bottoming candle right here that was registered at 8:20 in the morning. The issue and the way to play something like this is you want to play it as a retrace, but see that retrace has already occurred. It did there at 10 o'clock this morning and gave us a nice little bounce up. But all the while, the bounces are not significant on Radium. So What I'm thinking to do for Radium, and this likely won't happen during the session, but you see here, I've got another trend line that's connected down through these pivots. This would be the spot. Should we get a big sell-off on crypto right here in this trend line area, right under $2, $1.95 down to a $1.92, where the 786 fib retrace also corresponds with the declining trend line. So that area would be a money spot to get, but there again, markets are somewhat a little slow with Bitcoin trying to still maintain and get back above that trend line. Still unsuccessful as we see there. So with that being said, I'll still keep looking into everything, but I will jump into some questions as well.
So before we get started on answering the questions, I wanted to let you guys know that if you guys haven't had access to the questions, you're going to have to go to the Verified Investing main page, and then you can type in your questions there. So if you're not seeing how you can enter your questions, verifiedinvesting.com, enter your questions on the homepage. So just so to let you know, we do have a couple questions. So go ahead, Drew.
Yeah, I just see this one right here with Andre. Andre's asking, what are you guys thinking for .USDT trade setup? All right, so on my chart here, I've got the polka dot chart displayed with the daily time frame that we're looking at. And as you can see here, I'm eyeing this declining trend line right here. You see it's connected from pivot all through these pivots. Basically what this is an inverse head and shoulders pattern on this chart. A measured move for this was all the way up to 558. We didn't get that accomplished. However, we got so very close, and then selling pressure continued pushing price action down. But notice exactly where price came and caught support here on May 31st. And has since now has put in some bear flag price action. So the longer price stays like this, forming this L shape, which is a bear flag pattern, the likelihood actually is that price could go lower, but breaking this trend line will be significant. And this one that's highlighted right here, this diagonally down shaped trend line, breaking that would be significant because then that would X out this inverse head and shoulders pattern. So we'll have to be watching real closely what's going to happen. If it breaks it, that doesn't mean it'll collapse. But what happens is that targeted measured move is then taken off, and we could see a rebound, but it may just be at lower levels of support. One that I have here is at $3.56. That extends all the way back out to a low pivot here back in 2023 in October. But you see that area was already violated. So that could be violated again, but we'll see. This likely should provide some decent support should this bear flag mature and price action move down a little bit lower. Now, worst case scenario, we're coming down to this declining trend line right around here. And that all depends on what time that could happen. Let's just say if Bitcoin starts dumping out and we start getting back down to the $70,000 range in Bitcoin, Polkadot and all the alts will likely start having some issues there too. But good question there, Andre.
Yeah, unfortunately, DOT isn't in a setup right now where we could possibly short it. It's down 0.76%. We can't go long because it's down 0.67 or 76%. So unfortunately, for a day trade, it's kind of a no touch, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's not something like Drew was saying you could pick up on a swing trade if the setup occurs.
Correct.
All right. So Mark is saying, does the $85 a month now include you guys and Gareth Soloway alerts? Does it also include the Hodler?
Yeah, it does.
It sure does.
Yeah, it includes the Hodler as well. Hodler is a unique service, guys. That's one that I run. I have a longer term outlook on some of these cryptos. And it's kind of odd. Whenever I get into these positions, we want these to go to the moon. We want them to just continue going up higher and us go ahead and rake in amazing rewards for that. However, part of me is also hoping in some of my positions that it does go lower. That way I can start buying more, accumulate more coins in a higher cost as far as like my entry cost. The cost of the coin will be cheaper. But let's just say, for example, I went in for one entry of $500. If it's going down lower, I may start up in that ante to $750 or $1,000 and accumulating more of those coins. One things I do in Hodler too, I like to target some coins that have some sort of staking rewards.
Yeah,
that way awesome. We're looking to hold these for the long run, and we have technicals backing us up with these levels. And so The odds are in our favor for bounces in these coins at these levels as long as we get in at those technical levels. But then also, should that not work, we have the staking reward there too that's going to be paying us. So we've got two different forms of payment that are going to help and are a benefit for that service. The one downside with hodling, you're not as active, so it's more buying and holding and sitting and waiting. So if you're thirsting for that activity, that's what those other services all in that one umbrella cover for you guys. Ben's got his, and same with Gareth. They're going to be much more active in and out of positions than what I would do with the hodler.
That's right. But it is nice because when you're hodling, if it goes up 10, 15, 20%, you will unload some and wait for a pullback to re-enter it, right? So
that's correct.
Still longer term thought process, staking them, getting the rewards there, taking some profits, let it come back down and reloading. I mean,
correct. And in that sense, it will be a little odd. So say if we snipe off like we did with Ethereum, some of the lows, even when the price moves up, I'll exit some, but then I'll add higher than the lows that we initially got in, just because, like Ben said, there's ways to continue to make money and revenue off a portion of the position, and it's something that I'll likely target. All right. Next up, it looks like I got AK asking about Solana. All right. So Solana on the daily chart now, as far as day trade, we do have it coming down a little bit, but a lot of these cryptocurrencies are starting to notice how the pivot on Bitcoin occurred earlier. Same thing with the previous chart that we looked at too. They're not with Radium. They're not really giving us a day trade setup at the moment since the low was put in here. And if we had a day trading setup for it, likely is going to be somewhere along this trend line. So if we get price action to come back down, make new lows, we could. As far as swing trading though, with Solana, this is what I see happening here in Solana. This longer term trend, I've got two of them. One from a lower low, basically before the breakout occurred. If you can see down here, and I'll zoom in, you can see down here on the chart, we had bull flag pattern, then another bull flag pattern, and then we broke out. That's where we started to get above this high pivot. So this was the breakout area that I'm likely most concerned about, and you can see that's on the lower end that comes and cuts through price action right here. So should Solana continue down moving lower, we will have support right here with this bull flag consolidation. But then ultimately, I'm looking at this trend line, because if price stays above this trend line, Solana's got an opportunity to go much, much higher, but this will be the break point of it. And again, this trend line roughly below current price, right around 125.48, up to around 130, depending upon how and when price gets into that level. But that's the major area I would recommend you drawing a trend line from this pivot breakout all the way over to the pivot low that occurred on March 11th. And string that through. You can see it was like a bear trap that occurred right here, where price action dipped below, and it never confirmed below this trend.
Well, it's kind of Liberation Day as well, right? And so, or the day after Liberation Day, where the whole stock market just kind of tanked.
Yeah,
or kind of around that area.
That's a great point, Bing, because look at how strong this chart was compared to the S&P 500, right?
Right.
S&P 500 was getting clobbered, and Solana held on very strong. So that just further reinforces this inclining trend line as being a major line in the sand for Solana. Now, of course, anything can happen. Bitcoin can drop tremendously. The alts can drop tremendously. Anything can happen. So just because this trend line's there showing a major line in the sand doesn't mean it's a guarantee it's going to bounce up from that level and make new all-time highs. Just keep that in mind with investing. But that's the line right there that I really like, right around the 130 area. Should Solana come back down, I'll likely will start scooping up some more Solana.
All right. So the next question is from Zachariah. Started a short scalp on Ethereum that 15 minutes shows a topping tail. So I was looking at the chart, and let me explain to you. I like what you're thinking. Here is the idea behind what you were considering, right? So this tail right here would be considered, or what you think is a topping tail. And that's great because you spotted a high move and then a pullback. The nice thing about it is this high is higher than these pivots. So this would be considered, if this were valid, it would be considered a topping tail. Now, one thing I would like to let you know is, with the topping tail, the body must be in the lower 50%. And as you can see, it is. And so, and again, great job on that. However, the close of this candle was above 25%. So on a valid topping tail, you need the close to be below 25%. And as of right now, it doesn't look like it's at the 25%. So let me go ahead and change this. That's 236, 25. So here is the 25% Fibonacci retracement. So had this closed down below 25.35, it would have been considered a topping tail. Unfortunately, for this time frame, it's not, but based on that close. So another thing is, when you get into a topping tail, we generally want to wait for a Fibonacci retracement of about 50%. And the reason is because usually, if you're using a 15-minute time frame, your close is going to be, or your stop out is going to be any 15-minute close above the topping tail. If we get in too soon, then you notice that you've got a lot of rope to hang yourself on as far as this trade goes, right? So I would wait for the 50% Fibonacci retracement if this was a valid topping tail, and then any close above the high at 255, 25.54, that would be your stop out on a closing basis, 15-minute closing basis. So,
awesome. Good stuff there, Ben. All right. Next up, we've got a question about SUI, and the chart's just, oh man, lots of good questions in here. Where's the SUI question? And here, forgive me, I'm not finding the SUI question, but it was asking about how to trade SUI, and I'm not finding your name. So I'll just go ahead and jump into the chart, started getting some more questions in. Again, thank you guys for the participation. All right, so into the chart with SUI we go. The major thing for SUI, we can't get above this trend line and haven't been able to establish that sort of pattern, at least yet. Now notice we've broken out of that this inclining parallel right here. Price action came down, creating support right here where all this chop is. And so right now, the near term level to watch on the downside is extended out through this trend line. Notice how very similar to the previous chart that we were looking at, how we've had a bear flag or bear trap situation down here. Price bounced up, even put in a bear flag on top and then ripped higher. So there's two levels. The very bottom, you need to watch this inclining trend line right around $2.22. Then you've got this pivot high right here that is going to be $2.83. If you're interested in SUI and you want to be aggressive, that's where you're going to want to enter. Now, all keep in mind, though, this sort of pattern, we haven't established it yet, but it does almost appears, and actually it will fail with this lower pivot, but it's almost trying to put in a head and shoulders pattern on the chart, which would take SUI beneath this trend line. That would happen with the break of Bitcoin. Now, I do want to jump into another chart. This one I've mentioned on Trading the Close a few times. Bitcoin. This crypto has been so strong comparative to Bitcoin, or just look at the move from this low that occurred here in April 7th. So we had this April 7th low move up of 196%. The April 7th low here moved up on Bitcoin about 50%. So you can just see there the strength of this chart. Now, we did come down and test the 382 fib retrace from this move up, and we did that over the weekend. But I also want to bring your attention over here. Look at the massive green candles of volume that were just coming about. You can see over the weekend, we just had a lot of buying pressure come into Bitcoin, and you can see the volume candles all down here at the bottom. This is on the 10-minute chart again, but just notice that this was a huge collection of investors buying the stock right here at the 382 fib retrace. Doesn't mean it can't go lower, but I think it's very curious, and you can even see it illuminated right there on the daily chart. Look at that volume spike right here, with a lot of people very interested in price action in this Bitcoin not going lower. If it does go lower, we see there's amazing support. It's going to be down here roughly around 280. You have a little bit of pause here, but that area has already been tested. So under 300 is where I'm looking next. But should this play out, this neckline you see right here, and I'll get rid of the fib so you can see it a little bit clearer. We have an inverse head and shoulders pattern on Bitensor, and we haven't negated that yet, nor have we confirmed it yet. So you need to keep that in mind too. It's not guaranteed that we're going to move up, but should this play out, the measured move for this is up here at 811.09, implying a doubling of price action from where we're at right now. So this is one interesting cryptocurrency. All the while, you got to understand it's likely going to go the direction Bitcoin goes. So if Bitcoin starts stalling out, this will stall out and give buying opportunities, as there's a lot of investors in here, at least encouraged for price action to go higher.
Awesome. Yeah, I like that chart. Wilfredo is asking, greetings. What is best short Bitcoin ETF? Thank you. So there's a couple different ways. IBIT is a Bitcoin ETF. I actually personally prefer to short IBIT. It generally, in my experience, navigates the best or trades the best with Bitcoin. You can also go BITI as well. It's another pro short Bitcoin. I can't show that on my screen because I'm in below thin right now, but BITI would be what you would use to short Bitcoin.
Yeah, and there's tons of those ETFs, so make sure you select the right one. Follow what Ben recommends there. I'd highly support that because you just don't want to get caught up in one of those ETFs that's not tracking price action as closely, especially when you're looking for minimal moves in day trading.
Yeah, just the volume itself, on BITI, just not a ton of shares traded comparatively.
Gotcha. Yep. All right, Alex P. Gotcha. Thank you so much for that comment there. And next up, Sit is asking, what is long-term in 2030 forecast for XRP? And if you knew,
dude, I don't. I mean,
you know, you know what, but let's just be honest, you know, most everything we do though in technical analysis can help us and guide us for significant support or resistance levels that price will encounter, and then new patterns develop. And one thing you got to understand with technical analysis that I didn't necessarily understand too, because before I got into the market, you know, it was mainly you just listen to an analysis, any one of the analysis say, all right, buy Apple. And most investors, especially retail, will just buy and then go about their daily lives and forget about it for the most part, and then just leave it for years, right? And technical analysis, we find where price action is likely to go based upon the patterns that are presented. So tomorrow there's going to be a new candle. That's a new piece of the puzzle displaying to us what is the likely scenario for price movement. Now, when you're starting to talk 5 years out, 10 years out, then you start getting into the cycle realm. And I specialize in cycles here. For what I see with cycles, we're going to be experiencing some pretty significant tough times towards the end of this decade. Now, what does that mean with XRP? I can't really apply it to that. I can just see that we're going to have some financial difficulties in our stock market towards the end of this decade. Now, what I can tell you, though, is what I show on the charts of XRP. Now, I can show you likely what's going to happen in the near future. So we'll flip over here to XRP on the daily chart. And I've got that displayed right here. And you see, too, we've got, and I'll bring your attention to these two yellow trend lines, one being this declining trend line right here, and then another trend line right here. Why I bring your attention there, and a lot of charts have given this signal, doesn't mean they'll play out, but we have also an inverse head and shoulders pattern on XRP. Now, this one's already triggered. Now, it's also potentially on the cusp of breaking to the downside, which would negate this pattern. As long as XRP maintains above this trend line, you can get it from pivot high over here on March 19th, strung out to the pivot high on April 28th, and just draw that trend line down and extend it. And you'll see the price action is currently above it. But if we stay above that trend line, we got a chance to move up to $3.16 on XRP. Now that's most immediate near term. That won't extend out to 2030 one bit. You know, if you want to get out to more longer term analysis, you get into the monthly chart. As you can see here, if I get rid of some of this so we could see just a little clearer with the candles, we're having problems getting above the all-time highs on XRP. That's really the struggle of what's going on right now. Should we get above this and confirm? Now, this high pivot is $3.31 on the chart. Should we get above that and confirm? Well, then let's just, I mean, hypothetically, that's all you could really do. You would then say that that is the area on the chart that needs to be beaten to the downside. So say we get up here, then a longer term outlook would be we could keep going higher, but then once that breaks, once this trend line level breaks, that now opens the door to a lot more downside, potentially down into the under $2 range where you see this major pivot right here, as well as this consolidation right above that $2 area. So longer term range, really hard to tell you where it's going to be at 2030. Just like it would be hard for anybody to say where Bitcoin's going to be in the year 2030. Most everybody that I could ask, especially if you go back to 2020 and you had Bitcoin down here, prices right around $7,000. Nobody was really thinking that Bitcoin was going to run. Actually, a lot of people thought it would go high, but not as fast as it did. That's just the thing with cryptos. And then look at what it did too. Look what Bitcoin did. Came all the way back down here to $15,000 after getting up to 68. So that's also something to take a note of. Is what can happen before on a chart can happen in the future. We had a reduction on Bitcoin down 77%. That can happen again in the future with Bitcoin. If we're at current price, that's bringing us down to the $30,000 realm. So will that happen with all the new involvement with Bitcoin? A lot of people argue it won't. But one thing I get hesitant about with any long-term investing is when I hear people say it's different now. It's different now. It's not. Investing has been the same for millennia. You know, most folks go back to Tulip Mania back in the Netherlands. There will be something that's so hot everybody wants it, and it will seem like it will never go down. But then when nobody wants it, that stock will plummet or that crypto will plummet. So the same thing can happen on a chart that's already happened before. Just keep that in mind.
All right, next question is Eduardo saying, hey, Ben and Drew, I'm looking for a short bounce level on ARB USD at 34.80 price level. Would you please give it a look? Yeah, so here is the level. It's actually below what the current level that you were looking at on my chart. So you kind of got this inverse head and shoulders pattern right here, and it looks like it's just kind of retracing right here. So I don't necessarily think this is a bad play. ARB, you can see it's still kind of at the lows of the charts. As long as you have your stop out level or you have your ad level. So what we do on a swing trade, we start with a smaller position. Yes, it is getting into some technical support right here. So maybe starting a position wouldn't necessarily be a bad idea. And then, you have this low pivot right here. It kind of corresponds with this low pivot as well. So this would be your secondary support level. And then it could even come back down to the 2380 level as well. So as long as you are, what is this level? Let me see. 2417 level. As long as you're ready to ride the wave of it possibly going down 30% or having a stop at a close below on a daily time frame below this down sloping trend line, then you should be fine. Overall, again, this is super beaten up. Every time I talk about an altcoin, I do want to caveat with it really depends on Bitcoin. ARB has been weaker compared to Bitcoin. Bitcoin's making all-time highs. As you can see, ARB is still on the weaker side. So if we start breaking some support levels at the 101,000 or 100,000 on Bitcoin again, well, what's going to happen is people are going to panic, and these weaker altcoins, they're going to start flushing them out even more. So that's why it's good to have a stop out or just know that you can add to the position. So that's my thought on that.
Awesome. I'll take the next couple questions because one's a statement. Mark saying, I took the Winning Trader series. Awesome course. I use Chat GPT to build me an indicator that shows me every topping tail and bottoming tail. Love your channel, guys. Way to go, Mark. Way to take that to the next step. I love hearing that stuff. Max saying, any thoughts on Bitcoin mining stocks like IREN, CLSK, Mara, Riot, or any in particular that you guys follow or trade? Sure. I'll go over one, but I know you've got a lot you may want to discuss there too, Ben. But I particularly like CLSK. And one reason I do like CLSK, as you can see here on the daily chart, this company can mine Bitcoin cheaper. What they do, they use AI to help them mine, so they're able to become more efficient and mine those Bitcoins roughly $20,000 to $30,000 cheaper than other competitors in their space. All the while, it's undervalued compared to the other Bitcoin mining companies. And this is also a small cap. So with small caps, there does become there is implied risk that you could have much larger price swings. So I'd recommend with any small cap, you go into a position with a lighter percent of your portfolio. That way you can still maintain maneuverability and not get extremely hurt should any news develop that's not favorable for the company. But you see right here, right now with CLSK, we are beginning to break trend. You see this trend line that's extended from most recent pivot low, and then price actions moving up. It's got a nice bounce there, but then most recently has started to poke below. And yesterday, on Friday, it did confirm below this trend line, which now is making that resistance. However, when we look at this chart on the longer time frame, it is at a relatively great spot for a potential buy and move up higher. If you notice here too, this is major resistance with a declining trend line here, but this is all somewhat bullish consolidation on the weekly chart. Nice move up and a diagonal move down to the right side. So not quite an inverse head and shoulders pattern, but very close and similar to it. Once CLSK and once Bitcoin does make that new push and gets above the $111,000, $116,000 range, CLSK will likely be much higher on the charts. And so I do like it down here, even though we could experience some near-term downside, especially if Bitcoin starts getting hit. But the efficiency of this company, the potential for profitability, outweighing some of their competitors, really attracts me to this stock for a long swing trade.
So my thought on these Bitcoin mining companies, every 4 years they're going to lose basically half of their revenue. So they have to figure out how to diversify away from just Bitcoin mining, because every year the amount of Bitcoin that's being able to be mined gets cut in half, right?
Yep.
And we're already above 90% of all the Bitcoin that will ever be, which means that the supply is getting more and more limited. So they've got to work harder and harder just to make up the same amount of money. If you notice, all of these companies, they're still at their lows. Bitcoin made all-time highs. These companies didn't make all-time highs, which means that there's an inefficiency in these companies. If they can transition away from just Bitcoin mining themselves, I think there's a possibility that they could increase. If they don't, I don't think there's a lot of hope at least going to new all-time highs. Can you trade them? Absolutely. You can swing trade them. You can get 15, 20%, especially if Bitcoin starts running, a lot of money. A lot of people in the stock market treat these like altcoins. And so if Bitcoin starts running and really pushing, then you're going to get a massive inflow in these mining companies. But outside of that, they have some work to do, in my opinion.
Yeah. One tailwind you have for them is you have a lot of companies getting on board, trying to buy Bitcoin as the center piece of their whole business process, buying and holding Bitcoin. So there's more traction there, but Ben's exactly right. It's going to get more and more expensive to mine. So these companies have to become more efficient and or diversify. So, yep.
Okay. So we have a whole new group, like a bunch of you guys on here. So just letting you know, if you want to ask questions, you're going to need to go to Verified Investing homepage, verifiedinvesting.com. On the homepage, that's where you can answer questions. Okay. Or you can ask questions to us and we'll provide those for you. But that's how we're getting these questions here. Awesome. Andrew saying, hello, Benjamin. Thank you for helping us understand the market. How deep can Bitcoin retrace? Cannot we go down back to 74,000 again because Bitcoin was rejected at a high price over 109? Yeah, absolutely. Should we not sell Bitcoin now because we could buy Bitcoin cheaper, at least under 90K in weekly in a week or in July, or does the price go up again? Because if everybody expects decline, then opposite will happen. Well, I'm not long Bitcoin, so I'm actually short Bitcoin in our services. So for me, I'm waiting for a bigger retrace so that way I can unload my short, cover that position. I think overall Bitcoin has an upsloping trend line that's broken down. And so the next support, as Drew mentioned at the beginning of this, is right around 101 to $100,000, maybe 99,000. And so if we break that support, then we're going lower. But right now, Bitcoin's holding strong. So we got to respect that until additional confirmation or different additional support levels do end up breaking. Because there are a lot of people who are still bullish on out there. Just because here, a lot of us here at Verified Investing say that it's possible that it could go down. It doesn't mean it will, but there are still a lot of bulls out there that are holding on to Bitcoin. Also, what Drew was saying, they're starting, bigger institutions and bigger players are starting to accumulate a little bit more. So does that push it up because then the scarcity runs out? Or do they get all that they can have and then there's no more buyers? And so then the sellers step up and can really drive the prices down. I don't know. I guess we're going to have to wait and see.
And that you're exactly right, Ben. And you brought up that point, I think last time we were talking about it, maybe even last week on Trader's Edge Crypto, where all these new institutions are coming in buying Bitcoin. So that's putting more folks, let's say, in the room with holding Bitcoin. And as soon as everybody wants to leave, that could create a massive sell on Bitcoin, which could be quite frightening and quick. So, yeah, I think that's something to take note of and at least remember when buying and holding these cryptocurrencies. All right, so next up here, let's see. We're starting to get a lot more questions in. Awesome.
There we go.
All right, it looks like
Mark saying, can I hold IBIT for long-term, 5 to 10 years, or do ETFs go lower over time?
Yeah, so IBIT, ETFs in general are used to track where current price is on whatever that ETF is tracking. So, for example, the spiders track the S&P 500 and IBIT's tracking Bitcoin. But if we see here with the IBIT chart, we've got $59.32 price right now. So we're not anywhere near where the price is with Bitcoin. One thing to understand with ETFs, as long as they're not leveraged, and I'll get into that in a second, they rarely, if ever, go to zero, as they're designed to track a specific index or asset class. However, they can significantly lose value and even be liquidated due to factors like investor interest or fund performance and other market conditions. So there could be something, for example, there could be something having to do with this particular trust that has some sort of issues, whether it's, an accusation of fraud or whatever the case is. And I'm not saying that's going on with IBIT now, right, but that could pull the price down on this particular ETF, even though Bitcoin may be going up. So owning Bitcoin and owning an ETF are two separate things, even though they may be tracking each other. So if I were interested in a long-term hold on Bitcoin, I'd want to own that coin. If I were interested in a long-term hold on an ETF, that long-term in my mind would likely be under a year, something to swing trade the ETF, simply because there's less fees involved in most cases. That's something else to consider. ETFs also do have their own fees that are charged. But the main thing you should pay attention to if you're looking to hold an ETF for any duration is if that ETF is leveraged. If that ETF is leveraged, there is more risk holding on to such ETF in a longer period of time because there is slippage in value of that ETF. And you can simply do it with a mathematical calculation. Let's just say a standard, the Bitcoin goes down 10% and you're at a 3 times leveraged ETF. Well, then now your 3 times leverage goes down to 70, basically a value of 70. Let's just start it all at 100. Bitcoin was at 100, drops 10%. So you're down to 90. Your 3 time leverage was at 100 value. Now it's down to 70. Let's say it goes up 10%. Well, then you increase in cost from Bitcoin from 90 to 99, but then that 70 increase is by 3, right? So it increases up 21 points up to 91. So the Bitcoin single leveraged ETF is at 99, and then the 3 times leverage, you're at 21. So you can have slippage over time with those leveraged ETFs. But if you do have an isolated level down, it's extremely valuable to be able to play those leveraged ETFs and score on them, because the return can be much greater and much sooner of a time frame. But if you're wrong, be careful on those leveraged ETFs.
But something like IBIT, you could hold it. A lot of institutions, one of the reasons that they created these was to be able to hold Bitcoin long term. And the every time Bitcoin is bought, IBIT has to be purchased. So you can hold these long term, as long as, like Drew's saying, leverage ETFs will eventually go to zero.
Yeah, I'd still favor buying the real deal.
Sure, but deal. I mean, then you got to open up a Blowfin account or Coinbase or whatever, and then you have to have you can't have it in your same stock portfolio, and so then you have to have another account, and there's a lot of different things, and then you got to put it in your wallet, and there's hoops. There are a lot of people who don't want to jump through the hoops to trade it.
And it could be beneficial that way. So then you don't risk as much on it too. You could think if you have certain retirement account portfolios that don't allow you to buy crypto, then yeah, that could be your signal that maybe I shouldn't be putting a lot into this.
Sure.
So it could probably be a benefit for you. All right, Ben, what next question you want to tackle?
Oh, Yasin is saying, hi there. Not sure if the following question has been asked already, but do you see ETH developing a cup and handle? And if yes, would that play out if Bitcoin crashes? Thanks a lot, guys. You want to take that one?
Sure. Yeah, I'll take ETH. Yeah, ETH is.
I know you trade that in your
flag. What was that?
I mean, you trade that in the hodler.
Yeah, and we happen to get some great levels of entry down here in the $1,500 range. But so far, so good with Ether. Now, Ether, you need to understand, too, they had a major upgrade to their system. It was called I believe it was a Spectra upgrade. It was a Prague upgrade and a Sparta upgrade combined to call it the Spectra upgrade. That's what really gave it a good push right here and pushing higher. Because for the longest time, Ethereum was one of those altcoins that was being left in the dust because of its efficiency questions. Folks had other new altcoins coming up that were more efficient and streamlined and had very nice operating systems and also interconnectivity that were attracting attention. And Ether was kind of being left on the wayside. But with this update, it has now gotten back into center stage, and investors are interested in getting back into Ether. So with Ether, there's a couple areas you need to watch. So I scroll back on the daily chart. We see here we're in just kind of a big wedge pattern, right, on the chart. This was all kind of bearish with price action coming down here, even coming up, didn't surpass the recent highs, and has since kind of chopped around in this area, even breaking down under in which we captured some of the positions that we entered on that side. So what's happening right now with Ether is we broke back above inside this wedge, and we're now established. Notice, too, when price had a decent sell right here on May 18th and also 19th, that we came down and tested that trend line and then bounced right back up. That's a strong sign there for Ether that this area is now the line in the sand for a move potentially down, and it's also defended itself there. So you're right. So what I see with this is, in essence, what's formed on a lot of these charts, an inverse head and shoulders pattern that's developing on Ethereum. Now, Ethereum then, if it breaks above this neckline, it can go much higher on the charts, and we can give you an idea all the way up here to $4,101. So as long as this pattern maintains, you got to understand too, just like on the way up in times past, we just don't go straight up there. We usually go up, pause, go up, pause, go up, pause. There'll be lots of pauses and pullbacks along the way. But the main thing you should be watching if you're an Ethereum investor, you want to get above this trend line. It's right around $2,700 at the moment. You want to get above that, confirm, and then also attack this $3,000 level. There will be resistance here to $3,000 level should price get back up. And you could expect even at that point price to come back down to this trend line. If you didn't want to buy on at this point in the game and wanted to buy after a breakout, wait till price comes back to this trend line, and then the likelihood that price will go higher is still maintained with the probabilities, maintaining above this declining trend line. As I said, their measured move on it could stretch all the way up to $4,100. So there is significant potential gain for Ethereum, but it's at a really critical level right now. Where do we go? Do we continue this bullish consolidation and then break above here? If so, that could release a lot more buying pressure into Ethereum to push higher on the charts. And if we just do a quick comparison with Ethereum, where we're at now with here, let me flip over to the weekly chart. You can see here, all-time high back here, 4,800, price down at 25. Let's just look at Bitcoin on the weekly chart. And you can see it's got a lot of room to run compared to Bitcoin. Not saying it's going to get all the strength Bitcoin has, but it has a lot of room to run should investors start piling back into Ethereum. All right. That's what you got. Anything else to add there on Ethereum, Ben?
I love the downsloping trend line that you're referring to. Ethereum has got a lot of here. Let me switch to my chart. A lot of price consolidation, like you were mentioning, right underneath support. I mean, underneath the resistance. See, this is a ton of resistance that Ethereum is now consolidating right underneath it. So if we break above that, then all of a sudden we got to move higher, and then we could even, like you were mentioning, go up to the $4,000 level, 4116. You know, which would actually be a pretty good move on Ethereum. This is it's going to have some resistance along the way. Obviously, this is resistance here, and then you see all this price consolidation, probably get up to 3,100, face some resistance, and then ultimately up to 4116 is, I think, what we could get to. So yeah, it's looking good. And I guess the question was, even if Bitcoin drops, what's Ethereum going to do? Well, Ethereum hasn't necessarily been trading tick for tick with Bitcoin. Bitcoin was making highs and Ethereum was still dropping, right? And then if Bitcoin finally started to move up, but Ethereum like rocketed up. So yeah, there is some divergence, which is good for the health of an altcoin, especially something like Ethereum. So it could move independently of Bitcoin, and that's what it's showing. It's showing some relative strength versus what Bitcoin's doing. All right. So the next question is, Zachariah, do you think Move is finding a bottom? Yes, I actually had that up. So this doesn't show the overall chart of Move, right? It looks like Move has just started, but Move has been around for quite some time. I have it in TradingView, and this goes back to January 2024, even though this shows the end of 2024. So here's what I like on MOVE. We were talking about topping tails at the beginning of this live event. So you're towards the lows of the charts. The candle itself is great. I mean, the body of the candle is in the top 50% for a bottoming tail, top 50%, lower 50% on a topping tail. So bottoming tail, top 50%, and then it closed above the 25% Fibonacci retracement. This is a bottoming tail on MOVE. So on a technical basis, it looks as if MOVE has bottomed and there is more potential upside. The chart on MOVE, although it does have this bottoming tail, it is still one of the weaker altcoins. Keep that in mind when we're trying to isolate bottoms. Make sure that if you're trading this, that you have a tight stop. A close below the daily bottoming tail would be your stop out level if you're trading based on the bottoming tail. Your entry price would be a 50% Fibonacci retracement, and that 50% retracement is 1369. So that's what I see in the MOVE chart. All right.
Next up, Anon asking any analysis on Doge, and also saying love watching you guys daily. Hey, appreciate that, Anon. All right, so into Doge, I've got the daily chart displayed here, and we can see that we're starting to put in an immature bear flag pattern right on the support level. And I'll erase that so you can see this pattern. It's immature because it just hasn't had enough days of consolidation yet. Notice how this bear flag right here consolidated several more days than just 3 that's occurred so far. Notice how it took 1, 2, 3 more days beyond 3 before it started really breaking down, closing beneath the low pivot. So right now, near term, bear flag forming. I'll flip back and show you right on the support area of 18 cents, basically 19 cents. So this could be a significant level to break because if you notice, we're right now underneath trend, right? So we haven't confirmed underneath trend on Doge. But this could be a significant level to break. If it does break, we are coming back down here to the 16, 17 cent area on Doge. If this holds, though, we do have the potential for Doge to be running back up into the 31 cent area. But right now, it's kind of in a no man's land. I wouldn't be touching this necessarily going long or short. I'll just be waiting either if we get it more extended, moving down to that $16, $17 range, or maybe even shorting it, getting up into that $30 range. Or 30 cent range, excuse me. Looks like we got another question for coming up with Kieran. You have render pulled up there, Ben, or no?
Yeah, I do.
Oh, awesome. All right.
Here we go. So render is kind of in no man's land. You had this nice move higher, and this is on the daily chart. Nice move higher, but now you've had this pullback. So this is support right now. It's kind of like the inverse of what's happening to Ethereum right now. You have support and you're consolidating on support, which favors a move to the downside. Now it is immature, meaning that you only have 3 sideways candles. We need 5 to 7 or more candles consolidating right on support. Once that support breaks, then you got to move down. Right now, again, it's still on support. It's not at a place that I would enter for a long, but right now we got to wait for price action to determine which way this altcoin is going to go. Now it could get down to $3.26. You've got this low pivot right here, actually kind of 2 low pivots right in this area. So right around 325, 326 would probably be the first level that I'd be interested in. And then if you take a Fibonacci retracement, here's another thing you could do if you are interested in this trade. So 382. So the 786 Fibonacci retracement is just a little bit lower, around $3.15. But for me, that would be the first place I'd be interested in trading this.
Awesome. Jeremy asking about, I believe you're asking about using Bitcoin on Blowfin. And if you end up entering a day short or long based on what you see today, is it possible for you to do that on Blowfin without messing up the existing short I have? Yes. Yeah, you can. Well, ultimately, you want to have different accounts if at all possible, but I see what you're trying to do. But ultimately, I know I've done that many occasions. Say I've been in a swing trade and I used one portfolio for this day trade, and I wanted to, let's say I was swinging short a position and found a day trade opportunity to swing short there too, or to short. I could go ahead and initiate the short and then also cover, but then only just do so what I did with the day trading shares. And the same thing's true with the opposite. Say I'm shorting a longer term position and then I find a good support level. I can buy, let's just say 100 shares of whatever coin or stock you're going to buy, and then cover those or in essence, re-short. Because what I would be doing, I would be shorting with the longer term scenario. And then if I find a support level to day trade, I cover, let's say 100 shares at that level. But then once I'm done with that day trade, then I just add in the short shares that I use to cover, and then still maintaining the move down. That will manipulate the way that, in each brokerage is different because there's something called wash sales that go into effect. And so it will manipulate the price average of your allotment of shares at whatever you have short. So just understand, if you do start doing something like that, the display of your average price may not necessarily be accurate because that's being calculated off of what current allotment of shares that you have. A lot of cases with brokerages, let's just say it's 100 shares per entry. This one allotment of 100 shares took place on March 1st. Next one took place on April 1st. They're going to be almost like, even though the average in your brokerage is combining those two different 100 share purchases or shorts, when you go to sell or cover, your brokerage will calculate it based on the allotments that we're getting in, unless you change that to, because usually it's a first in, first out operation. And if you change that operation to first in, last out, then the wash sale manipulation won't be as much. But you just mainly have to keep in mind that you're still making trades off of the levels you see, whether that be, say, you're shorting, you cover because there's support in a portion of it, and then reshort once you've made that trade. You've made the difference in that value from the cover to the reshort up for that particular trade, and should be adding or at least moving your average in the right direction, minus the wash sale scenario. So the best way to do it is just to set it up. If you have to trade in one account, I would recommend setting up the first in, last out scenario instead of first in, first out. That way you can maneuver with those with less manipulation on the average price. Otherwise, I would highly recommend just getting separate accounts. Separate account solves all that problem. And then that way you can say, hey, I'm day trading one account, and then I'm swing trading in another account. And then that way it's a lot cleaner.
All right, Mark. Anon, we've already analyzed Dogecoin, so we're going to move on. Bitcoin. So Mark's saying Bitcoin actually put in a 10-day topping tail. I've never used a 10-day topping tail. I've never used a 10-day chart with bearish divergence and into an upsloping trend line. Is going back to 2017. The last cycle high put in the same thing: bearish divergence, 10-day topping tail into trend line potential top. I think it's a potential top. I wish I had an indicator on here that showed divergence on Blowfin. I don't. What I'm seeing, and this is using the weekly time frame, I'm actually not seeing bearish divergence. Oh, that's not true. I am seeing bearish divergence on the weekly chart. I was looking at the daily chart. Daily chart, I don't. So it is possible that the 10-day would also be putting in negative RSI divergence. I don't have access to the 10-day time frame to see if the topping tail is valid or not, but I'm assuming it's the highs of the charts, 10-day topping tail, and negative RSI divergence. It could, again, we just need to break some support, 101, 99, and then right around, 100,000. 101 and 99,000 are basically the three levels that need to continually break in order for it to get an additional flush out for Bitcoin. If that happens, then we've seen a top. Right now, we're still hovering right around 103, 104,000. If we can keep a base and create this nice upsloping trend line, as long as we're staying above an upsloping trend line, then we are going to it favors a move to the upside. Here is the chart that I have, though. You got this trend line right here. Oh, shoot. Let me try this again. You got this trend line. Okay. So you got one hit, a kiss, two hits, three hits, fourth hit right here, consolidated right underneath it, and now we're rolling over. So for me, this price action right here at 103,500, this is where your support lies. You break this, you're coming down here, maybe 97,000. But additionally, all this support is still intact, because as soon as we break above this resistance level, we come back, retest it. This is going to be a lot of support. So we've got a lot of choppiness to get through for us to determine if this is the top. I'm short in my services. I think that we are overextended to the upside. That doesn't, unfortunately, doesn't guarantee that there's a rollover, but that's just what I'm seeing. Yes, this is a potential top. So we got time for one more question.
Yes.
And
I've seen this one's going to be a pretty easy one. Let's see. It says, any live trading today? No, unfortunately not. We did get into that a little bit earlier, guys, but with Bitcoin kind of chopping sideways on the 10-minute chart, that happened. And you know what? One thing I would do want to add to Ben, what he was saying, but this sort of chop right here, and also a lot of other coins were chopping as soon as we got in. It's not giving us an advantage whenever price is just kind of range bound within a small range. It's not giving us an advantage to enter or exit trades. But one thing I wanted to back up for Ben's statement there, being more bearish on Bitcoin, Anybody knows anything? I've seen one of the comments. Someone took the Winning Trader series. If you haven't taken the Winner Trader series and want to learn about time counts, I go over that in my course too. Mastering the Overnight Trade, the sleeper hold. Bitcoin has put in a time count on the weekly chart. And then what's happened since then, we've pulled back. So the likelihood is still showing that we likely and probably should continue pulling back. We'll just see how much we pull back and if Bitcoin then starts ripping to new all-time highs. But the probabilities are showing that, yes, Bitcoin should pull back and cool off after this nice move up from the lows there in April.
All right. Hey, you guys, thank you so much for the interaction. Thank you so much for the questions. The way you guys posed the questions were amazing. Drew, thank you so much for your analysis. I appreciate being on here with you, going over charts. Unfortunately, we didn't get any trades for the day trade room, but analyzing charts is kind of what we live for anyways. And so providing that was great.
Yes. So, and next time, that just means the odds are we're likely going to have a couple day trades pop off in our show. So come back, join us. We'll have a whole bunch of other analysis to go through with these charts. And then also having an opportunity to make some money day trading cryptocurrencies live, guys.
Yeah, this would be nice, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. But thank you guys so much for joining us. We'll go ahead and hop off now. This was our first session here on YouTube. Again, what Ben mentioned before, if you want to ask questions, we'd love to have your questions posted. Just go on our main page, log in. If you haven't done so yet, create an account, and then you'll be able to log in and access everything right there on the main page of our website at verifiedinvesting.com.
That's right. All right, you guys have a great day, and we'll see you guys in the charts.
Sounds great. Take care, guys.